Welcome, guys, to this episode of the Expository podcast. For this episode, we'll be talking about product management in specific, and we have a very special guest with us. We have Amol Dalal. Amol recently got placed as an associate product manager with Flipkart, also known as the Flipkart APM role. So the way we'll be recording this podcast is that I'll be giving you a brief introduction about Amol, and then we'll, have a moderated chat with Amol, wherein he'll be walking us through his journey of, how he broke into Flipkart, and let's say all the other questions surrounding product management that definitely, or sometimes pop up in people's mind. Definitely, Amol, will be taking our time to answer all those questions as well. Right. So talking a little bit about Amol, is from the 2016 batch. He is an MSc Maths plus a mechanical engineering graduate. Some of his internships include his product intern with Ed. He's also been a data science intern with Microsoft Research, and I think he did his PS1 with Honda as a supply chain intern. Apart from that, he's had a slew of amazing POAs on campus. He's been the Kosakan for Boston Spawns, and apart from that, he was also the consulting director for 180 DC. Right, a guy with a very stellar resume right now with us for this podcast. So welcome, Amol. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you for a very kind introduction, Ruthi. Happy to be here as well.
Thanks for joining us, Amol. Amol, so I think moving on to our first question, this is something that generally gets asked whenever it's a product management podcast. How, in your words, would you define product management as a role? What do you think does that role entail? Something that can help our audience connect better with this entire role at hand.
Yeah. So, product management is basically a role in a company where you are responsible for the success of a product. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very simple one-liner explanation of what product management is about. And what I mean by the success of a product here, we can sort of break that down into two parts. So, the first part is basically understanding that by defining the success of a product is that are you solving a problem that is faced by users, right? That are you able to solve a problem that your users face on everyday basis? Are you making their lives easier? And the second part is that is your product able to deliver good business value to your company? So these are the two
Right.
things that we are sort of solving for by building products. So this is what we do as product managers. And in terms of so this is more of at a high level what we are working on. But what does a product manager actually do on a day-to-day basis? So that is something that depends a lot on where you are within a product lifecycle. And a product lifecycle is basically the different stages of building a product. So at first you have an idea when you're conceptualizing a product. Then you are actually sort of developing a strategy to take the product from an idea to actually releasing it out to your customers. And after that you work on improving your product through iterations and feedback that you get.
Mm-hmm.
So we can break the product lifecycle into two parts. That is the ideation phase of a product and the implementation phase of a product. So the ideation phase is where, as a product manager, you are prioritizing what are the problems that your organization should solve for to make the lives of your users easier. And this is where you take into factor things like customer feedback, work with a lot of data, and sort of work towards conceptualizing product ideas that are in alignment with your company's mission. That, for example, if Facebook's mission is to make is to get people closer through the internet, then whatever product ideas you have as a product manager at Facebook will be catered towards solving that company's mission. So this is more of an ideation phase where you're working with other product managers as well as analysts to figure out what is the problem that you really want to solve for.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have like a product roadmap drawn out, that's when you move towards the implementation phase. So when you're actually in the implementation phase of a product, that is when you're building a product and then launching it out to the public. You as a PM, you work with a different number of teams in your organization, which depends a lot on the scope of your product. But mainly, it consists of your engineers, it consists of your designers, it may consist of analysts and data scientists, marketing people, as well as people from operations. So this is where you are leading the product development across different teams. and helping launch that product by collaborating with the different stakeholders on time, and as well as ensuring that the requirements of the product are being met and you're able to launch a good product out in the market which also satisfies your business goals. So these are the main two phases of a product manager that sort of define what responsibilities you will have. And post launch you will also then see how your metrics are holding up. And metrics are basically terms that define the success of a product. So for example, if you launch a product, you may have certain revenue targets that launching a new product or improving a particular product may help me achieve certain revenue numbers, or it may help you retain your customers better, or improve your customer satisfaction score, or reduce the time or steps taken for a user to achieve something. So it can be different metrics that you're looking at here, and you will keep a track of how your metrics are holding up and what is the customer feedback like, and on the basis of which you continuously keep on improving your product with, again, the help of your stakeholders. So in a nutshell, that's what product managers do, and it's a highly collaborative role where you're constantly solving problems with the clear objective of making the lives of your users easier.
Right, right, understood. Okay, thanks a lot for such a detailed explanation. I think that opens, that helps clear a lot of questions. Okay, moving on to the second question. Could you briefly talk about what all opportunities do you think are available from campus? Let's say if you talk about specifically from a placement, and let's say from the point of view of PS2, shed some light on that, please.
Sure. So you have around 4 to 5 companies that come to campus right now for product management roles.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Flipkart, which comes for the APM program. You have Axis Bank, which is also hiring product management, which is also hiring for product management roles. You also have an academy and Park coming down for campus placements. And in terms of PS, you have a bunch of openings for product analyst roles. So Snapdeal is one example. And mainly a lot of startups are hiring through PS. So just be on the lookout for what roles do these startups have to offer. And in most cases, you'll find a lot of cool startups offering APM or product analyst intern openings.
Right, Amol. So I think this one question actually gets asked a lot, right? So, given that PM lies at the cusp of so many different fields, how should one decide whether PM is actually meant for them or not, right? Because let's say not everybody is good with design, or let's say somebody might be good with design but not as good as with tech, right? So could you just highlight some metrics, some parameters that you think people can take into account while taking this decision of whether they want to pursue product or not?
Mhm. Absolutely. So, when it comes to product management, it basically lies at the intersection of three things. That is business, technology, and design. And in terms of what's required out of you, at a very broad level, it's a high level conceptual understanding that you should have of all three. You don't really need to be a designer or a software engineer to be a product manager. An understanding works at a conceptual understanding which is good enough for you to really understand what your engineers or designers are working on or talking about is more than enough to break into a product management role right out of college. We'll sort of speak more about that later as well. But when it comes to understanding whether product management is something I would like to do or not, so I think there are mainly 3 to 4 things that if you enjoy, you will make a very good product manager. So, if you are someone who likes working in teams, and if you are someone who's passionate about solving problems and at the same time can empathize with the user, then product management is something that you'll really enjoy, right? As well as also things like sort of having high ownership and a strong bias for action go very well in hand with your product management role. So when it comes to some of these metrics, right, through your college experiences or your prior internships, you may get a fair idea of whether it's something you would like to do as a part of a product manager or not. But then specifically when we talk about how passionate are you towards solving problems, as well as how well can you empathize with the customer. So those two things are not something that you can really base of your past experiences, right? So there's a very good exercise that you can do to get a better flavor of that, which is that we all end up using a lot of products around us, be it the apps on your smartphones, or be it certain hardware products, or
Mhm.
even certain websites.
Right.
So and like not all products are perfect, because there are constant changes and improvements to any of the platforms that we use as consumers.
Mhm.
So a very good way to test whether you're passionate about solving problems and empathizing with the customer is that, can you really identify what you like, number one, and number two, you do not like about using a particular product,
Mhm.
and brainstorm how can you effectively come up with a solution. So this is a very simple exercise that will help you test how good you are at solving problems, and how well can you empathize with the customer. And a lot of times the customer may not even be you, it may be someone else. So even looking at a product from their lens is a good trait to have. So if this
Right.
is something that really excites you, then product management is something you would really love to give a shot at. And an extension of this is also that if you actually have an idea and if you have time available at your hands, then you can try building it out. That,
Mhm.
and like using, say, certain no code tools, or even just running a small experiment with your friends, right?
Right.
So this is something that will also give you a real flavor of being a product manager, since you are building the product instead of just conceptualizing it. So that's only one part, but
Right.
shipping a product is also something that's very crucial to the day-to-day life of a product manager. And yeah, just I to summarize it, brainstorming and building things is something you like to do, along with the other qualities we mentioned beforehand. I think product management is something you really love to give a shot.
Right. Understood. I think on that note, Amol, could you probably, give any examples from your life wherein you sort of, came up with any of the gaps that existed in the recent products that we'll be using, and, probably, came up with some of your own solutions, maybe during your time at TED, or, during your time at Microsoft, any problems that you figured out existed?
Yeah. So I remember undertaking a project in my fourth year. So this is so like the problem statement here was basically that, since we were all living in bits, right? And content was not as easily available to us in terms of TV shows or newly released movies. There was
Okay.
often a risk of us sort of encountering spoilers on the internet, right? Even when
Okay.
where like at places you would least expect them to. So this was like a problem statement I felt was somewhat crucial. And
Okay.
whenever like a new show would be released, I think within a week it would be more or less be spoiled for you. So
Right.
sort of thinking of this as a problem statement, I wanted to build an algorithm that detects spoilers in tweets, right? So if you're using Twitter and if you see that certain spoilers are being discussed, then
Mhm.
can like so basically what I worked on was build an algorithm that detects spoilers in your tweets and classifies them as whether these contain a spoiler or not, and whether or do they not contain spoilers. And on the basis of which you can actually block certain keywords on Twitter. So this was a way to sort
Okay.
of automate your experience rather than you completely hibernating, going into hibernation mode, and
Right.
not use social media at all. So I think this was a good problem statement to work on, and it was a tiny project that I'd worked on for like a couple of weeks. And yeah, I think it was something that just was really fulfilling for me at that time. And yeah, give me a better flavor of what I would like to do later in my career, which is basically driving impact and solving meaningful problems.
Right, right, understood. I mean, if I may, I mean, would love to call Expository also as one of the products that we are building. I mean, definitely, there's an empathy factor over there that we realize that a lot of people miss out on that career path. But yeah, let's just hope that it pans
Mhm.
out well. Probably will take some more advice from you through your PM experience to make Expository better. Right. Okay. Let's move on with the podcast. Let's just not deviate a lot. Right. So you talked about, let's say, certain metrics that people can analyze within themselves, or people can sort of introspect whether they live their life in this fashion or not, or whether they like discovering all these small little gaps in products or not. Do you think companies also look
Mhm.
out for the same metrics, or do they have like a different hypothesis of what an ideal candidate for product management should be like?
Yeah. So, right. So I think there's a fair overlap in what interests you and what is expected out of you. But then there are also other metrics that a company looks for. So when we talk about product management roles right out of college, so there are mainly six qualities I would say that are super critical.
Mm-hmm.
So the first is, of course, are you a good problem solver? So this
Okay.
mainly means that are you able to identify the right problems to solve for, right? So you have a ton of features on, say, a particular website of your company, or you may have a lot of subsections within an app, and the user journey or the user flow for most of these features is fairly complex, and you may see certain trends as to your certain metrics may stop holding up after a period of time, or you may feel that you can do better, your product can do better in terms of
Right.
performance and customer satisfaction than it is doing currently.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're presented such problem statements, are you able to identify what the actual problem is, what is your root cause, and are you able to prioritize the right problems to solve for? So this is something that's very important as a product management. As a product manager, I think it lies at the heart of product management. So
Right.
having a strong problem solving ability is something that is expected out of you, and this is also something that's asked in your case interviews, where you're
Right.
given problem solving cases. And I think apart from problem solving ability, what's also looked out for is, can you empathize with the customer? So as
Mm-hmm.
discussed previously, not all your users may have the same user journey or may have the same requirements out of a product.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're building products, right, how can you really optimize the experience for your users? That is something that's looked at as well. So like one very simple example for this is that, let's just say if you're booking a cab on Uber, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if now if your app does not have, if your app requires the user to manually input his or her address each of the time, then that's bad user experience. But then if you're
Right.
automatically saving their arrival and drop locations from previous trips and are suggesting it based on the basis of where they're located, then you're sort of helping make the user journey for that particular user more efficient, I would say, and
Okay.
less time consuming. So that's basically empathizing with the customer, that understanding what he or she wants when using that
Mm-hmm.
product, and how can you really drive that fulfillment up. So customer
Mm-hmm.
empathy is something that's, again, lies at the heart of product management.
Right.
And apart from this, what's also very important is, are you a good communicator? Because as a product manager, since you're leading a team of engineers, designers, data scientists, analysts, customer support executives, there are so many people that you have to align with. It's very essential to ensure that you are communicating the right things as concisely as possible to
Mm.
all of the different stakeholders. This could include things like, number one, your requirements when you're giving your product some shape. Number two could be helping resolve any conflicts or delays.
Right.
And number three could be just helping prioritize the right things to solve for. So since as a product manager you are leading a team, you also need to align them towards working on the same product. And since shipping a product is not always a smooth sailing process, you may have certain blockers or certain cases where firefighting may be required. So communication is something that is a strong ally of yours at that time,
Right.
and can really help you ship your product on time, meet its business goals as well as the company objectives, and at the same time not compromise on the actual quality of the product, which is basically an extension of your user satisfaction. So being a good communicator and being able to persuade and align your team is something that's highly underrated and will also help you a lot as a product manager. So these are the three things that are, I think, very important, followed by your understanding of business, technology, and design. So, an understanding of business is important mainly because you can build a good product, but at the same time, you should also be cognizant of how it will impact your company's business. So,
Okay.
finding the right balance between a good user experience and strong business value is something that's a great quality to have.
Mm-hmm.
Tech understanding is also important because since you're working with engineers, you should also have a conceptual understanding of how can you build efficient, reliable, and scalable products, right?
Right.
So, say if you're launching a product which is only being used by 1,000 people and it is performing well, but then does the performance of your product hold up when you say have a million users, say 6 months later? So basically ensuring that your product is reliable from a technology point of view, that is also something that a product manager should understand at a conceptual level. So this is something that's appreciated as well. And an example of this can also be things like just understanding, right? That say if you're placing an order on Swiggy today, then what really happens in the backend? How is your order communicated to the restaurant? How long does it take for a restaurant to approve or deny your request? And after which, uh, how long does it take for you to communicate the same back to the user? And what is the architecture that is supporting all of this, right? As
Right.
well as connecting your order to a delivery boy.
Mm,
So there are a lot of nuances behind simple operations, something like even like a Google search. So basically figuring out or having a conceptual understanding of how the tech behind such complex products work is a good trait to have. And when you talk about design, it's not really, say, actual design knowledge that you're supposed to have, but
mm,
it's more of understanding how to build for good user experience. So, what an example of this could be that, let's again take the example of Swiggy, right? So now there are hundreds of restaurants, there are so many dishes, and we don't really want the user to be flooded with too many options and not be able to decide what
mhm.
food to order. Or
Yeah.
basically, the problem statement is that how can you help the user order as efficiently as possible
Mm,
and the food comes to them hot and fresh. So to
mhm.
make their lives easier, you should understand that how can you optimize your user journey to make this process as seamless as possible and as easy as possible for the user as well. How can how can you really use data that is available to you
Mm,
along with strong design principle to ensure that it's a great user experience for your user. So that's what it's meant by design as well. So
right.
yeah, I think just to summarize, design is basically how do you improve your user experience at a very broad level. So these are the six things that I would say are very are what is looked for when it comes to your product management interviews. And all of
Mhm.
these are tested through it goes some way or the other in your case interviews, which we'll discuss further.
Right, right, understood. Let's move on now to the meat of the conversation, right? The strategy part, preparation part that I think a lot of people would be waiting for by this time. Right? Break down your
Mhm.
preparation strategy into two halves. Let's talk about the long-term goal that you had, let's say the long-term experiences that sort of shaped up your journey towards product management. And then we'll also talk about, let's say, the short, but the more rigorous strategy that you took up to actually break into Flipkart or let's say any other APM role that you actually sat for. Right? So could you just, talk about
Yeah.
this thing, in those two halves to give people an entire full-fledged experience of, how to go about preparing for roles like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think one thing that I would like to highlight is that when it comes to product roles that hire out of college, so unlike consulting or any other non-tech roles, there is not, say, certain spikes that are being looked for in your resume. So there is no, say, GPA criteria or certain PURs that you must have or certain internship experiences that you may have. So that way it's fairly background agnostic. So that's a good thing about product management, that it's not something that you really need to have product management internships or something of the sort
Mhm.
right from the beginning of your college life. So that's one good thing. And how it worked out for me is that ever since my first year, I happened to explore a lot of things. And I think, as
Mhm.
Rudhir had also mentioned, that I had a supply chain intern in my second year. Then I moved to data science in my third year before finally interning with cred in my pre-final year. So for me, it was my college life was filled with exploring new things,
Mhm.
and my learnings from each of those actually added up to help me land management role out of college.
Right.
So for me, how it worked out was that in my first year, I was curious about design, right? As to how user experience design can be optimized even further, or what are the latest trends that are there existing in that space. And I
Mhm.
would also take up small projects at club or department level, be it
Mhm.
something from designing t-shirts to brochures as well, or actual pitch decks. And yeah, I think just sort of getting my hands dirty with design gave me
Mm-hmm.
a real flavor of what works, what does not work, and sort of
Right.
helped strengthen my understanding. And there are a lot of UX case studies that are available online, which also give you a true flavor of how design really works well at a product level. So just
Right.
reading up on that, out of curiosity, worked really well for me in terms of building a strong design sense.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to how my business experience was shaped up, I would credit that to my time at 180DC, where we actually worked with a lot of non-for-profits towards achieving their business goals. So, sort of approaching their problems in a structured format, as well as working on different problem statements, to deliver strong business value, was something that helped me. Also was reflected in, say, any case competition I took part in later on, or my internships and product roles later on.
Right.
So, I think this being a part of 180DC helped me a lot there. And this can also be coupled with my experience in case competitions, where along with sort of getting a strong business idea, things like how do you, so things like, we did a SWOT analysis for a company,
Mm-hmm.
as well as looked at, say, focus five forces, and develop a growth strategy at a high level. We research how subscription plans or work. So we worked on like a bunch of things there. So even though, that gave me a strong business understanding, sort of my time at 180DC and case competitions also helped me improve my problem solving ability. So this is basically that if you're given a very vague problem statement, how do you make more sense out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you derive insights from whatever data is available to you, as a part of the problem statement or even online,
Right.
in a very structured format. So I would say my involvement in extracurriculars here in the forms of 180DC was super helpful towards building a strong business understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And again, here, I think, similar to design, there are a great number of resources online which just talk about how certain businesses have flourished, or why certain products have done well, why, whereas certain products have not. So just, I think, being curious about whatever you come across, or just reading up on case studies is a very good way to better understand what works, what does not work, and what can you learn from it. And
Mm-hmm.
speaking of technology, I would say that I would say that when it comes to technology, there was a time in my third year where I really got into data science, and like the Twitter project I mentioned before, I would try building things, or just learning more about the field in general. I was curious about how does data science work, number one, and what are its applications. So
Right.
just reading about that sort of helped me with my tech understanding, along with just following blogs online,
Mm-hmm.
and similar to how I mentioned before, just being curious about how things work can
Right.
help you understand how products work from a tech perspective. So I think there's an underlying theme to business tech and design, that is being curious about things. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're curious about
Right.
how things work around you, you'll get a fair understanding of what how do products work from a tech, business, and design perspective. So
Right.
that way, the internet is a very good place to learn. And so I think this sort of covers at a broad level how did I get an idea of product. And when it comes to things like sort of working with teams, right, or being a good communicator, being able to persuade people or align people, I would credit that to my time at Blossom Spawns as Kosakin, because there, as say we're working on raising sponsorship for for the fest,
Mm-hmm.
you eventually speak to a different number of professionals, right, who are working as marketing heads in leading MNCs and companies.
Right.
So convincing them to be a part of the fest and bringing value to them, right, is
Mm-hmm.
something where your persuasive skills are really tested. And apart
Right.
from that, as Kosakin, you also have to take a lot of decisions, keeping in mind that the success of your fest the top priority. So aligning different members of clubs, departments, as well as ensuring that the Bitsians have a good experience
Mm-hmm.
is something that you get a real flavor of through your Kosakin tenure. And yeah, I think just sort of firefight, like sort of firefighting there, or working under pressure, leading teams and juniors around you, as
Right.
well as just working as a team, are qualities that sort of working in any fest or a club can really help you develop further. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think this is all that I did as a part of my first couple of years in college. So this is when I was not entirely sure of what I really want to do outside of as soon as I graduate. So for
Right.
me, just trying new things out worked brilliantly in helping me learn things that would eventually come in handy as a product manager. And I think, so I think this is what I did till my pre-final year. And in my fourth year, it was when I was exploring other career opportunities and just speaking to seniors that I realized that product management is something I would like to do. Following which, I actually ended up pursuing my internship at Cred, got a real flavor of how product management works, which further convinced me that this is really what I want to do out of college.
Right, right, understood. So I think you can probably never really anticipate that, what will experiences in your life will sort of sum up to lead you to the right direction. Because I mean, since you mentioned things like designing posters for, clubs and departments, I think that is a task that a lot of people are sort of not very happy with, because probably they're not able to see the long-term value that, it might have in your life. And I think for you, it actually panned out really well. That, all of these things, it became a sum total of all the activities that you've been a part of. So I think that was pretty amazing to know. Let's just also talk about, let's say, the shorter term strategy in terms of the rigorous preparation that you took up, for those last couple of months. How did you prepare, about that? Did you refer to any of the books that are out there, or I mean, how was it exactly?
So yeah, I think I discussed my long-term strategy and how my various college experiences helped shape me for a product management role. But then when it
Right.
comes to your actual product management interviews, I would just sort of elaborate on that as well. So mainly when you're applying for product roles, either through campus for placements or through internships, there
Mm-hmm.
are mainly three types of cases that are asked out of you. So number one is a problem solving case. Where you are sort of given a problem that your company's metrics are following, or your products metrics are following, and how can you really approach that problem in a very structured format, identify the root cause, and then suggest solutions that can help drive your metrics back to normal, as well as improve your customer experience. So that's one kind of question that's asked in your product interviews.
Okay.
Second is a market entry or a guesstimate case, right?
Okay.
So this is something where you may be asked to sort of take a call on whether a particular company should launch a product in a new space. So an example of this can be that should Uber launch two-wheeler cabs, right? Something like what Rapido does.
Okay.
Or for example, should Spotify enter the video streaming market since they're already into music streaming? So
Right.
these can be certain problem statements that can be thrown at you. And you have to
Mhm.
then understand that, is this something, does this make sense for the particular company to do on the basis of their business targets, as well as improving customer experience. And the
Okay.
third is a product thinking round where you may ask to come up with concepts for designing new products.
Mhm.
So something like, as a product manager of Facebook, can you help create a jobs platform? So this is where you'll have to basically understand that, what can Facebook do differently when creating jobs
Mhm.
platform for individuals, identify what are the current gaps in existing products, and empathize with the
Mhm.
customer and really build for a solid user experience. So these are the three types of questions that are mainly asked in your product interviews. So coming
Right.
to preparation for this, there are mainly three resources that come in handy when preparing for product case interviews. So there are three good books you can refer to. Number one is Decode and Conquer. That's a very good case book.
Okay.
Number two is preparing for product interviews. It's actually written by current associate product managers at Flipkart. And the
Okay.
third is cracking the PM interview. So these three books have a lot of mock cases which give you a real flavor of how to approach these cases.
Mhm.
And speaking more about the exact process I went through, so Flipkart comes to campus in September, and
Right.
this is when you have an orientation session where all your doubts about the program are cleared, and you get a better idea of what your role as an APM entails. Following which, you are given 2 weeks for your first round. That is a deck submission round. So this is basically a round that is used to shortlist candidates for the interview process, and the decks mainly ask you to sort of to identify a product that you have been using, right?
Mhm.
And talk more about what problems have you faced when using that product, and how using technology can you come up with a solution that effectively solves for it. So you will
Right.
get around 2 to 3 weeks to prepare to submit a deck, right, for the shortlisting process.
Mhm.
And this is something where you have more than enough time to really come up with a deck and a good problem statement. And I think in the long term, just naturally being curious about problems you faced using products around you is super useful, as
Right.
well as the stuff we mentioned earlier about doing a simple exercise which really helps you work on your customer empathy as well as problem solving skills. So
Mhm.
you'll get 2 weeks to submit it, and I think around 20 to 25 candidates are shortlisted on the basis of this deck, following which you have interviews. And for problem solving, product thinking, as well as market entry or guesstimate interviews, you will have around 3 to 4 interviews as a part of the interview process, all of which are taken by product managers or senior product managers at the organization. And to prepare for this, you are given 1 month after your shortlisting process, where
Okay.
current APMs from Flipkart help you out with your case solving skills by being your case solving buddies. And at the
Right.
same time, you also practice cases with your other shortlisted candidates to get a real flavor of how case solving actually works, right, in an interview process. And 1 month there, I would say, is more than enough to really be prepared for your interviews. So when it comes to the actual interview process, I think it's a very well designed program, and you will get a lot of help from your peers as well as from current APMs to become really good at solving problems. So that is something that happens in September, and your interviews will happen in November. So if you want, you can also start preparing a couple of months beforehand. It would not hurt when even other product roles come to campus. And the same also applies for internships, although the process can vary slightly from company to company. So you may not have
Right.
formal rounds which will talk about problem solving or product thinking, but at a very broad level, they are testing for the same core values that we have discussed earlier. So these are the first 3 rounds that you have for the Flipkart APM process. And then you have 2 more rounds after your problem solving, product thinking, and market entry cases, which basically test for your technical understanding. You'll be asked certain conceptual questions here, right? So something like how payment gateways work, or how we discussed the Swiggy problem statement earlier in terms of what actually happens in the backend once you place an order. So
Right.
you may be asked certain conceptual questions, and
Mhm.
this is basically to understand that how good is your technical understanding at a very broad level. So you
Right.
can expect questions related to that in your tech round, and your final round will be a hiring manager round, where you may be
Mhm.
asked questions about yourself and your resume. And yeah, so what I would say is that the good thing about product roles, as mentioned earlier, is that it's not background agnostic. So none of your so like the shortlisting process as well as your first couple of interviews are not something that is based around your resume. So it's complete that it's something where they're only testing your problem solving skills at the end of the day. So yeah, I would say that a good couple of months, just I think 1 month of preparation before your actual interviews is good enough time for you to be a good problem solver and actually crack your interviews.
Right. Right. Understood. Okay. So I think like the gist of the entire thing is that product is something that uh maybe you naturally sort of keep preparing for. I mean, throughout, let's say, your college life, through your various experiences. That 1 month of preparation is just, let's say, like the icing on top of the cake, right? But then at the end of the day, it's more about you being curious to know about products, to do your own research, to, let's say, develop that sense of empathy, right? I think without that long-term orientation, it's very difficult to sort of develop all of those skills in that 1 month work span. If you've had, let's say, like a strong foundational background before, 1 month is good enough time to go through your casebook and be prepared for the role. Right. Right. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Okay, we're moving slightly, to the last few questions of the podcast. We won't want to take up a lot of your time, Amol. So, since you've done, a lot of good interns, you've interned with Cred, you've interned with Microsoft. Um, is there, let's say, a hack for finding, all these good product interns? Are there specific um websites or any groups out there that people sort of become a part of, and then they get access to most of the opportunities? Could you comment a little bit on that as well?
For sure. Yeah, so I think when it comes to internships, I don't think there are like a lot of opportunities that are available through campus internship season. I think you mostly have
Mm-hmm.
software roles or core engineering roles that come through that. But a good
Right.
thing is that a lot of startups today are hiring for product management intern roles as well as APMs out of college.
Right.
That way, a very good way to really land an internship is to apply off campus. And what you can
Mm-hmm.
do is you can reach out to current PMs or even recruiters at certain organizations or startups through LinkedIn or Twitter.
Right.
And I think this is a very efficient process that has worked for like a lot of people in terms of landing great product gigs right out of college.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of channel, LinkedIn and Twitter are the places to be. And I would now sort of say what really helps you convert a product role better, right? Before the interview process that was already elaborated on in the previous question, it's more about actually getting an interview, right? So, a very good way to sort of stand out when applying off campus is to take a unique approach when it comes to reaching out to product managers. And basically, what you can do here is that instead of just having a textbook message or mail that you're sending out to your to companies that you like to apply to, saying that hi, I'm XYZ and I'm interested in a product internship role. I think you can go one step beyond here and just talk about the product and give
Okay.
your feedback on the product, or just come up with a very simple and short deck on how you would like to improve the product.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something that really helps you stand out in two ways. As a product manager, what's really expected out of you is that you are someone who is super passionate about the problem that is being solved for, as well as you
Right.
are someone who loves taking ownership and you have a strong bias for action. So, really being super invested in the problem or in the product right from the get go and demonstrating that to potential recruiters or your managers from the beginning can really
Right.
help make the process easier. And it also makes for a great conversation with your interviewer as well,
Mm-hmm.
because it sort of works well in two ways, right? That if you really love a certain product, it makes for a good brainstorming exercise where you can discuss why certain things work for the product, why certain things do not work, and
Mm-hmm.
why improving a product in a certain fashion may work or may not work. So
Right.
it'll give you a
Okay.
real flavor of how actual product managers brainstorm. It makes it a very good learning experience in terms and a great conversation. And it's a very good way for them for you to reflect your qualities of sort of having high ownership as well as being empathetic towards the user and a good problem solver right from the
Right.
beginning.
Right.
It's an approach that you can really try and has worked for like a lot of people when landing good product internships. And in terms of also uh, getting in touch with the right people, I would say one more good way is to actually reach out or have a network in college who can help you connect to the right people working at product roles. Just being in touch with seniors who are currently working in product roles, or even say seniors who are working as SDAs in an organization but can help you connect to product roles, is one good
Right.
way of
Mm-hmm.
landing internships. So having a good college network is something that definitely helps you. In fact, it's also something that helped me land my internship at Cred. And
Okay.
apart from this, also there are great channels to follow online. So I think there's a Twitter account called the Product Folks. It's a community of product enthusiasts which posts monthly hiring threads, right, where it just
Right.
compiles all the different startups that are looking to hire for product roles. So that's another approach you can also give a shot, apart from just reaching out to companies you may be interested in through LinkedIn or Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there are like a number of ways you can go about landing product internships, but as long as your core fundamentals on why you'd be a good fit for a product manager are displayed from the beginning, I would say it's a fairly, it's not a difficult process, and it's something where you would enjoy the process as well and land a good role, right out of college.
Right, right, understood. I think there's also like a Slack group for the product folks. I mean, I'm a part of it. Right? So a lot of interesting conversations happen over there as well. And since you mentioned the hiring thread, so definitely I think they put it out on Twitter as well as they're on the Slack group as well. So yeah, definitely I think a lot of things happening out there in the product ecosystem. I think recently there have also been amazing startups like Upraise that help you break into product management, although it's a little tough to break into Upraise at the first place. But yes, definitely, so PM School is also there. So I think definitely a lot of people trying to give back to the community in terms of sharing their knowledge and their experiences, because product is something that's come up in a big fashion. Right, Amal, thank you so much for that, for answering that question. Moving on to again the second last question for this podcast that we have. So let's say, since you mentioned that a lot of product openings, so let's say that there aren't a lot of product openings from campus, if I put it that way. I mean, you mentioned only about 4 to 5 companies that come, right? And let's say given that there are close to 1,000 people that be sitting for placements, that depends on which semester you sit
Mhm.
for, whether companies come in the opposite semester or not. I think people tend to sort of not get a lot of product roles right after their undergraduate degree, right? But then let's say when it comes to a lot of B
Mhm.
schools, at least I have heard that uh, product hiring from B schools happens at a much larger level and the number of product companies coming are also more in number. So for somebody who is hell-bent on getting into a product role, would you suggest that taking up an MBA path or a B school path makes sense for this person? Or in your opinion, is there a better way to sort of go about it?
So, I think, in my opinion, an MBA makes a lot of sense when you are not exactly sure of, if product is something you like to do right out of college.
Okay.
And the real, like a good value add of an MBA degree is that it can help you break into a different number of highly coveted roles right after the completion of your degree. So, for example, a lot of firms hire for consulting roles out of an MBA, or you can even break into venture capital or private equity, or even say marketing roles or product management roles, right? So you have a lot of opportunities after completing an MBA. So that's where it sort of adds a lot of strong value. But sort of when you come to the point of product opportunities out of campus or right out of undergrad, so even though you may have limited companies that officially visit campus, I think a strong reason for that is that a lot of startups, which typically hire for product roles out of college, don't really are not allowed for placements, and you actually have larger corporations hiring students right now undergrad. So
Right.
APM programs are something that are very popular among startups, even though we are also seeing a trend where larger corporations such as Ola are also adopting this program with time. So
Mhm.
I think in the future you'll have more larger corporations which will visit campus for placements,
Okay.
who will hire for APM roles right out of college.
Right.
But strictly speaking, I would not say there's a shortage of roles. You actually have amazing startups out there who are working on brilliant problem statements in different fields, right? Fintech is one, e-commerce is
Right.
another. You
Right.
may have something like delivery as one more. So you
Mhm.
have interesting problem statements to work on. And if at the core, if you're convinced that product management is something you really like to do, I would say that it's not difficult to land a role out of undergrad. You will definitely find a fulfilling role, at a startup right out of college.
Mhm.
However, if you're someone who's very particular about working in larger organizations, then I would think an MBA is a safer bet. But I would not say that's something that would make a difference if you are, if you're really convinced of product management right out of college. So just to summarize, I
Right.
would say that there are like a lot of opportunities when it comes to startups. You can really give it a shot through an internship or through a job right out of college, and
Mhm.
see whether product management is something that works for you or does not. And a good thing is that even if you go for an MBA later on, your product management experience really helps you cultivate skills that will be super helpful for you in terms of MBA as well. So
Right.
definitely there's a good number of opportunities available, which will be even broader when it comes to an MBA. But I would say that an MBA makes much more sense when you're unsure of what you really want to do, and get greater and get a deeper understanding of the various career options, and then take a more informed decision.
Right, right, understood. Okay, okay, fair enough. Okay, so let's move on to the last question for this podcast. Um, so let's say there were one advice that you would have given to your younger self while you were in college. I mean, right now you graduated already, right? But let's say if there was one thing that you could sort of do, or something that you felt that you knew before, something that could, make your journey a lot more easier, what would it be? Anything that you think right now help the people who are there, let's say in their first years or second years, or for that matter, not even in their third years, right?
Mm. Yeah. So I think there are two things that are highly underrated, and I feel that we can do more of in our college years. So
Mm-hmm.
college is a very good time to experiment and learn from mistakes.
Right.
So when it comes to utilizing your college time, I would say that I think which just being curious to learn new things, which has been at the core of our discussion today, right? Is
Right.
something that we should do more of when it comes to any field that we're a part of. So it does not
Mm-hmm.
matter if you want to become a product manager later on, or break into any other field. It's not something that's only unique to product management. But then curiosity really helps you learn faster and helps drive innovation. And just reaching out to your peers, your mentors, your
Mm-hmm.
professors, and learning from each other, as well as just spending your time building things or brainstorming about things, is something that is highly underrated and will make you a good problem solver in any sphere of life.
Right.
So that's something I would say or recommend to all juniors who are watching this, that I would say just explore a lot of things, explore whatever you are passionate about, give
Mm-hmm.
it a real shot, and never let that curiosity die, and just be on the lookout for learning new things, expanding your knowledge, and having healthy and proactive discussions with people around you, and
Right.
learn from each other. So I think that's one good thing that will not only help you land jobs, but also help you for the rest of your life. And secondly, as an extension of just learning things, right? I would also say that reading is something, like this, reading books or blogs or newsletters is something that will really help you learn about things faster. So
Right.
whenever you may feel that you are not sure of certain things, right? You may not be sure of how certain things work, or if you want to take a certain path, how would you really go about it?
Mm-hmm.
So apart from talking to people, just reading, other people's experiences, or just like maybe if you're interested in finances, is reading about stocks or how the market works or economics, right? I think just having a strong reading culture is something that will help you a lot as well, in terms of being really resourceful, getting better insights of how things work around you, and making more informed calls later on in your life.
Right.
So I think at Bit we can really do with a strong reading culture, and more knowledge sharing among each of us. And I think when it comes to product management, an extension of the fact that it's a very supportive community out there. So just being active on your social media and following product managers from different organizations, right? You'll
Mm-hmm.
learn a lot from their experiences, building products, as well as their feedback on certain resources or reading material that
Right.
will really help you accelerate your learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in a nutshell, just being on the lookout to learn from anyone and everyone as as fast as possible is something I would really recommend to everyone watching this.
Right, right. All right, Amol. Thank you so much for answering that question for us, and thank you so much for being here with us for this podcast. It was amazing talking to you. And I definitely think that, this recording will make it available to the people. And I'm sure that, this will definitely help people plan their product journey a little better. So thank you for sparing all the time with us for this podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure doing this.
Right. Thank you.